My husband vanished on a cruise ship in the Bahamas. They told me he jumped. Have you ever felt that moment when your entire world tilts off its axis? When everything you thought was solid and real suddenly becomes a question mark? That's what happened to me on April 15th, 2023, at exactly 2:47 in the morning, somewhere in the dark waters between Nassau and Freeport. My name is Grace. I'm 58 years old, and I'm about to tell you the story of how my husband of 36 years vanished into thin air on what was supposed to be our dream vacation. If you had someone missing in your family, you would also understand the torture of not knowing, the endless loop of questions that plays in your mind like a broken record. Was he pushed? Did he jump? Was it an accident? Or was it something far more sinister that the cruise line doesn't want anyone to know about? Tell us here in the comments what you would do if this had happened to you. Subscribe to our channel to follow our exciting stories. Richard and I had been planning this cruise for 3 years, 3 long years of saving every penny, cutting coupons, skipping dinners out, all so we could celebrate our upcoming retirement together. He was 62, a mechanic who had spent 40 years with grease under his fingernails and an aching back from bending over engines. I was a high school English teacher, counting down the days until I could finally stop grading papers and start living the life we'd always dreamed about. The majestic seas was everything the brochures promised, gleaming white against the turquoise Caribbean waters, 15 decks of pure luxury that we'd never experienced before. Richard's eyes lit up like a child's when we first walked up that gangway. He squeezed my hand and whispered, "We made it, Gracie. We finally made it." I close my eyes now, and I can still feel the warmth of his hand in mine. I can still smell his aftershave mixed with the salt air. I can still hear his laughter as he tried to figure out how to work the key card for our cabin. Such simple moments that I'd give anything to have back. The first 2 days were perfect. We ate at the buffet until we couldn't move. We sat by the pool and read books we'd been meaning to get to for years. We held hands during the sunset and talked about our plans. A little house near the beach in Florida. Maybe getting that RV we'd always talked about. Visiting our daughter Sarah in Oregon more often. Finally having time for all those grandkids we'd been promised but hadn't arrived yet. On the 3rd night, there was a 70s dance party on the Lido deck. Richard loved the 70s. It was when we'd met, at a college party where he was trying desperately to dance to Stayin' Alive and failing miserably. I'd taken pity on him and shown him a few moves. 38 years later, he still couldn't quite get the rhythm right, but God, how he tried. I know there are many people like me who have lost loved ones, sons, daughters, wives, husbands, mothers, fathers, and have done everything they could to find answers that would comfort them. If my story touches your heart, subscribe to the Stories of an Unsolved Disappearance channel. Activate the bell, because every day I share real stories that need to be told. Your support helps me reach even more people who need to know they are not alone. That night, Richard was in his element. He'd bought a ridiculous polyester shirt from the ship's gift shop, orange and brown swirls that hurt to look at. He'd slicked his gray hair back and was doing his best John Travolta impression. I was laughing so hard I could barely breathe. The band was playing Dancing Queen, and Richard was spinning me around, both of us stumbling a bit from the 2 Mai Tais we'd had with dinner. "I love you, Gracie," he shouted over the music. "I love you more than the day I married you." Those were the last words my husband ever said to me. At 2:32 a.m., Richard said he needed to use the restroom. The ones by the dance floor had a line, so he said he'd go down to deck 7 where our cabin was. He kissed me on the cheek, I can still feel the scratch of his stubble, and said he'd be right back. I waited. The band played 3 more songs: Heart of Glass, Le Freak, I Will Survive. That last one feels like a cruel joke now. I kept dancing with some of the other wives from our dinner table, checking the door every few seconds for Richard's ridiculous shirt to come bobbing back through the crowd. After 20 minutes, I started to worry. Richard had prostate issues. We both knew that was just part of getting older. But 20 minutes seemed too long. I excused myself and went to check the restrooms on deck 7. They were empty. I knocked on our cabin door, thinking maybe he'd decided to lie down. No answer. I used my key card. The room was exactly as we'd left it, my reading glasses still on his pillow where I'd forgotten them. That's when the cold fingers of fear started creeping up my spine. You know that feeling, don't you? When something shifts from inconvenient to wrong. When your body knows before your mind admits it that something terrible has happened. I went back to the Lido deck. No Richard. I checked the casino. He'd been talking about trying the slot machines. Not there. The late-night pizza place, the library, the gym. With each empty space, my heart beat faster, my breathing got shallower. At 2:47 a.m., I went to guest services. The young man behind the desk, Bradley, his name tag said, smiled at me with that practiced cruise ship smile. "Good evening, ma'am. How can I help you tonight?" "I can't find my husband," I said, and just hearing those words out loud made them real in a way that terrified me. Bradley's smile faltered for just a second before he recovered. "I'm sure he's just exploring the ship, ma'am." "It's easy to get turned around. What's your husband's name?" "Richard. Richard Patterson. Cabin 7142. He typed something into his computer. Then he picked up a phone and said something I couldn't hear. His face had changed. The smile was completely gone now. "Ma'am, I'm going to have security do a quick check of the ship. Would you mind having a seat right over there?" "Someone will be with you shortly." Shortly turned into an eternity. I sat in that uncomfortable chair, watching drunk passengers stumble by, listening to the distant thump of music from various bars, and praying that Richard would come walking around the corner with some ridiculous story about getting lost or falling asleep in a deck chair. But here's the thing about prayers. Sometimes they go unanswered, and sometimes the answer is worse than the silence. The security chief was a man named Marcus Williams, built like a former football player with kind eyes that couldn't quite hide his concern. He sat down across from me in a small office behind guest services, and I knew from his expression that this wasn't going to be a story about Richard getting lost. "Mrs. Patterson, I need to ask you some questions about your husband. When did you last see him?" I told him everything. The dance, the Mai Tais, the bathroom, the kiss on my cheek. He took notes in a small notebook, occasionally asking for clarification. How much had Richard been drinking? Had he seemed depressed lately? Were there any problems in our marriage? "No," I said, my voice getting sharper with each question. "We were celebrating. We were happy. This was our dream vacation." Marcus nodded, but I could see he was checking boxes in his mind. Older couple. Alcohol involved. Late night. I'd watched enough true crime shows to know where this was heading, and I didn't like it one bit. "Mrs. Patterson, we've initiated a full search of the ship. We're checking every public area, every cabin, every storage space. We've also reviewed the key card logs. Your husband's card was used to open your cabin at 2:38 a.m. My heart leaped. "So he went back to the room?" "The door was opened, yes, but the card wasn't used to lock it from the inside." It took me a moment to understand what he was saying. Richard had opened our cabin door but hadn't gone in. Or had gone in and left immediately. But why? "I need to show you something," Marcus said, his voice gentle in that way people use when they're about to deliver terrible news. "We've been reviewing the security footage." He turned a computer monitor toward me. The image was grainy, black and white, but I could see it was one of the exterior decks. Timestamp, 2:39 a.m. "This is deck 7, starboard side, near your cabin." I watched a figure walk into frame. Even in the poor quality video, I recognized Richard's shirt, his slightly bow-legged walk from an old knee injury. He was alone, walking steadily, not stumbling or weaving. He stopped at the railing and stood there, looking out at the dark ocean. "Keep watching," Marcus said softly. Richard stood at the railing for maybe 30 seconds. Then he looked left, then right, as if checking to see if anyone was around. He put one foot on the lower rail. "No," I whispered. He put his other foot up. He was standing on the lower rail now, holding the top rail with both hands. The wind was whipping his shirt around. He looked down at the water, and then the camera feed cut out. "What happened? Where's the rest?" Marcus's expression was grim. That camera malfunctioned at 2:41 a.m. By the time the next camera picks up that section of deck at 2:43, there's no one there. I stared at the frozen image on the screen. My Richard, standing on that railing, looking down at the black water below. It didn't make sense. None of it made any sense. "He didn't jump," I said. "He wouldn't. We were dancing 15 minutes before this. He told me he loved me. He was happy. Mrs. Patterson, I know this is difficult." "No, you don't know." I slammed my hand on the desk. That's not my husband on that video. I mean, it is, but it's not. He wouldn't do that. Someone must have threatened him, or pushed him, or... I was grasping at straws, and we both knew it. But how could I accept that the man I'd shared my life with for 36 years had just decided to climb over a railing and disappear into the ocean? Without a note? Without a word? After telling me he'd be right back? Marcus let me cry. He pushed a box of tissues across the desk and waited while I fell apart. When I finally looked up, he said, "We've notified the Coast Guard. They'll initiate a search pattern based on our location and the currents. We're also conducting a full investigation on board." What kind of investigation? We're interviewing all passengers and crew who were in the area. We're reviewing all security footage from the entire evening. We're checking to see if your husband had any interactions with anyone that might have seemed unusual. Over the next 48 hours, I learned more about cruise ship procedures than I ever wanted to know. They searched Richard's and my cabin 3 times, looking for a note, for drugs, for anything that might explain what happened. They found nothing but vacation clothes and too much sunscreen. They interviewed me for hours, the same questions over and over. Was Richard taking any medications? Yes, blood pressure pills, and something for his cholesterol. Nothing new. Had he ever talked about suicide? Never. Not once in 36 years. Had he been acting strangely? He'd been excited, happy, more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. They showed me more security footage. Richard at dinner, laughing at something our table mate had said. Richard at the casino earlier that evening, playing blackjack and losing $30. Richard at the bar, ordering those Mai Tais, joking with the bartender about the little paper umbrellas. A happy man. A man looking forward to retirement, to grandchildren, to that RV we were going to buy. Not a man planning to jump off a cruise ship in the middle of the night. The other passengers were both kind and terrible. Word spread quickly through the ship's gossip channels. People I'd never met stopped me to say how sorry they were. Others stared and whispered. I heard fragments of conversations. The woman whose husband jumped? Probably insurance money. You never really know someone. Sarah flew in to meet the ship when we docked in Fort Lauderdale. My daughter, my rock, looking so much like her father it hurt to see her. She held me while I sobbed in the cruise terminal, surrounded by happy vacationers heading home with their sunburns and souvenirs. Mom, what happened? This doesn't make any sense. I told her everything, showed her the videos on my phone that security had given me copies of. She watched her father standing on that railing, and I watched her face crumble. There has to be more, she said. Dad wouldn't. He just wouldn't. That became our rallying cry over the next weeks and months. He wouldn't. He just wouldn't. But the Coast Guard called off the search after 72 hours. The cruise line concluded their investigation with a finding of probable suicide. The life insurance company launched their own investigation, which is a special kind of hell I wouldn't wish on anyone. Did you know that cruise ships have a surprising number of people go overboard each year? I didn't. Between 20 and 30 people annually, according to the statistics I've now memorized. Some are accidents, some are foul play, and some, they say, are suicides. But here's what those statistics don't tell you. They don't tell you about the cameras that conveniently malfunction at crucial moments. They don't tell you about the witnesses who suddenly can't remember what they saw. They don't tell you about the crew members who are transferred to other ships before you can talk to them again. They don't tell you about the questions that keep you up at night. Why did Richard go to our cabin but not enter? Or if he did enter, what made him leave so quickly? Why did he look both ways before climbing on that railing? Was he checking for witnesses? Or was he looking for someone? Someone he was meeting? Someone who was threatening him? And the biggest question of all, where is his body? Because here's another thing I learned. When someone goes overboard on a cruise ship, they usually find the body. Maybe not right away, but eventually. The currents in that part of the Caribbean are well documented. The Coast Guard knows their search patterns. Bodies surface. It's been over a year now, and Richard has never been found. Tell us here in the comments what you would do if this had happened to you. Subscribe to our channel to follow our exciting stories. The first 6 months after Richard disappeared were a blur of bureaucracy and breakdown. I had to navigate a legal system that wasn't designed for people who vanish at sea. How do you declare someone dead when there's no body? How do you settle an estate when the life insurance company is convinced your husband committed suicide and won't pay out? How do you explain to the bank why the mortgage payments have stopped when the account was in his name? But worse than all the paperwork was the silence. Our house, which had always been filled with Richard's presence, his coffee mug on the counter, his shoes by the door, his terrible humming in the shower, became a museum of absence. I couldn't bring myself to move anything. His reading glasses still sat on his nightstand. His toothbrush still stood in the holder. His dirty clothes from the cruise still sat in the laundry basket, and I couldn't wash them because they still smelled like him. Sarah tried to help. She came over every day at first, bringing groceries, helping with paperwork, trying to get me to eat. But she had her own family, her own job, her own grief to deal with. After a while, the daily visits became weekly, then every other week. I didn't blame her. How many times can you have the same conversation? Mom, you need to accept that Dad is gone. But what if he's not? What if he's out there somewhere? Mom, you saw the video. I saw a video with a convenient malfunction at the crucial moment. She'd sigh, I'd cry, and we'd end up holding each other, both of us broken by questions that had no answers. The rock bottom came on a Tuesday in October. I'd spent the entire night going through cruise ship forums online. Yes, those exist. Communities of people obsessed with cruise ship disappearances, convinced there's a massive cover-up, that cruise lines pay off authorities to avoid bad publicity. I'd become one of those people, posting Richard's photo, his story, looking for anyone who might have seen something. At 4 a.m, I found a post that made my heart stop. A crew member from the Majestic Seas, posting anonymously, claiming he'd seen something that night. Passenger was arguing with someone near the crew stairs on deck 7. Security told us not to talk about it, got transferred 2 days later. I messaged him immediately. No response. I kept refreshing, kept checking, but the account had been deleted by the time the sun came up. I called Marcus Williams at the cruise line. His number had been disconnected. I called the main security office. They said he no longer worked for the company. No forwarding information. That's when I knew, really knew, that Richard hadn't jumped. Something had happened on that ship, and someone was covering it up. I hired a private investigator with money I didn't have. His name was Tom Garrett, a former cop who specialized in maritime cases. He looked at all the evidence, interviewed me for hours, and then said something that changed everything. Mrs. Patterson, has anyone ever suggested that your husband might have been involved in something he shouldn't have been? What do you mean? I've been doing some digging. The night your husband disappeared, there was a significant amount of money that went missing from the ship's casino. Almost $50,000. It was kept quiet, but my sources tell me they suspected an inside job. Richard didn't steal any money. He lost $30 at blackjack. I'm not saying he stole it, but what if he saw something? What if he witnessed something he shouldn't have? It was like a light switch flipping on. Richard, my honest, straightforward Richard, who would return extra change at the grocery store, who once drove 20 miles back to a gas station because they'd undercharged him. If he'd seen someone stealing, he would have said something. He would have done the right thing. The crew member, I said. The one who posted about seeing Richard arguing with someone. What if it wasn't an argument? What if someone was threatening him? Tom nodded. It's a theory worth pursuing. But Mrs. Patterson, if we're right, if your husband was killed because he witnessed a crime, then you could be in danger too. I laughed, actually laughed. Mr. Garrett, I'm 58 years old. I've lost everything that matters to me. If someone wants to come after me for asking questions, let them come. At least then, I'll know I'm on the right track. Tom looked at me with something like respect. All right then, let's shake the tree and see what falls out. We started with the crew members who'd been on duty that night. Most had been transferred to other ships, scattered across the cruise line's fleet like seeds in the wind. But Tom was good at his job. He tracked down 3 of them. The first 2 wouldn't talk, hung up as soon as Tom mentioned the Majestic Seas. But the third, a young woman named Maria who'd worked in housekeeping, agreed to meet with us in Miami. She was terrified. Her hands shook as she sipped her coffee in the little Cuban restaurant where we'd met. I shouldn't be here, she said. They told us not to talk about that night. Who told you? I asked. Security. Management. They said it was a suicide, case closed, and talking about it would only hurt the family. She looked at me with dark, haunted eyes. But I saw your posts online. I saw you searching for answers, and I know what it's like to lose someone and not know why. What did you see, Maria? She glanced around the restaurant, then leaned in close. I was cleaning on deck 7 that night. Late, around 2:30. I saw your husband walking with someone. A man in a crew uniform, but I didn't recognize him. They were talking, but your husband looked upset, scared. They went toward the crew stairs. Can you describe the man? Tall, dark hair, maybe 40 years old. He had a scar on his left hand. I noticed because he was gesturing a lot. Did you tell security this? She nodded. They said I was mistaken, that the cameras showed your husband was alone. They showed me the footage, the same footage they probably showed you. But I know what I saw. Your husband was not alone. What happened after you reported it? 2 days later, I was transferred to a ship going to Alaska. They said it was a promotion, but I'd never applied for a transfer. When I asked questions, they told me I could take the transfer or find another job. Tom and I exchanged glances. This was it. This was the proof that Richard hadn't jumped. Maria, Tom said, would you be willing to make a formal statement? To go on record with what you saw? The fear in her eyes was answer enough. I have a family. I need this job. I'm sorry. I've already said too much. She left quickly, leaving her coffee unfinished. But she'd given us something precious, the truth. Richard hadn't been alone. Someone had been with him, someone the cruise line was protecting. The question was, who and why? The breakthrough came from the most unexpected source. 3 weeks after meeting Maria, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line simply said, "Your husband was a hero." The email contained a single attachment, a grainy cell phone video. My hands trembled as I clicked play. It was footage from inside what looked like a crew corridor. The timestamp showed 2:23 a.m. on the night Richard disappeared. I could see 2 men in crew uniforms wheeling a large cart covered with a white cloth. They were moving quickly, nervously. Then, from the right side of the frame, Richard appeared. My Richard, in his ridiculous polyester shirt, obviously lost and looking for a bathroom. He stopped when he saw the men, said something I couldn't hear. One of the men pulled back the cloth slightly, and Richard's whole body language changed. He stepped back, his hand going to his mouth. The video cut off. I called Tom immediately. He was at my house within an hour, and we watched the video over and over, trying to make out every detail. "That cart," Tom said, pausing the video. "Look at the shape under the cloth. What does that look like to you?" I didn't want to say it, but I knew. A body. That's what your husband saw. That's why they killed him. The word hit me like a physical blow. Killed. Not jumped. Not disappeared. Killed. "We need to take this to the authorities," I said. "We will. But first, we need to know who sent this." The email address led nowhere, a temporary account created just to send the video. But Tom had contacts in digital forensics. Within days, they'd traced the video to a crew member named Luis Mendoza, who'd been a security officer on the Majestic Seas. It took Tom another week to find him. Luis was no longer working for the cruise line. He was living in a small apartment in Houston, working construction, looking over his shoulder constantly. When we knocked on his door, he almost didn't let us in. But when I showed him Richard's photo, something in his face crumbled. "I've been carrying this for over a year," he said. "Your husband. He saw something he wasn't supposed to see." Luis told us everything. There had been a death on the ship that night, a young crew member who'd been involved in the casino theft. He'd been killed by his partners when he'd tried to back out. They were moving the body to throw it overboard when Richard stumbled upon them. Your husband tried to stop them. He said he was calling security. One of them, Dimitri, he worked in ship security. He panicked. He grabbed your husband, told him if he said anything, they'd kill you too. Your husband didn't believe him. He tried to get away, to get back to you. So they forced him overboard? Luis shook his head. Not forced. Dimitri told him they had someone watching you at the dance. Said if your husband didn't disappear, they'd throw you overboard too and make it look like a murder-suicide. Your husband, he chose to save you. The room spun. I gripped Tom's arm to keep from falling. Richard hadn't jumped. He hadn't been murdered. He'd sacrificed himself to protect me. He made Dimitri promise, Luis continued. tears streaming down his face. Made him swear you'd be safe if he went over. Dimitri agreed, but only if it looked like suicide. No notes, no goodbyes, nothing that might make people suspicious. Your husband agreed. He climbed over himself, but Dimitri made sure the camera malfunctioned first. Why didn't you come forward? Tom asked. Dimitri said he'd kill me, kill my family. The cruise line covered it all up. The theft, the murder, your husband. They paid off the right people, transferred anyone who knew anything. But I kept that video. I knew someday someone would need to know the truth. I sat in that small apartment, surrounded by water-stained walls and the smell of old cooking, and felt my heart shatter and heal at the same time. Richard hadn't abandoned me. He hadn't chosen death over our retirement dreams. He'd chosen my life over his own. Will you testify? I asked Luis. Will you help me get justice for Richard? He nodded slowly. I'm tired of running. Tired of being afraid. Your husband was brave. It's time I was too. The next months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Tom took our evidence to the FBI. Turns out crimes on cruise ships fall under federal jurisdiction. Luis's testimony, combined with the video and Maria's statement, she finally agreed to come forward, triggered a massive investigation. Dmitry Volkov was arrested in Miami, trying to board another cruise ship under a false name. 2 other crew members were arrested in their home countries. The casino manager who'd orchestrated the theft was found in Mexico. One by one, the dominoes fell. The cruise line fought hard to keep it quiet, but the story broke anyway. Passenger sacrificed himself to save wife in cruise ship cover-up. Richard's picture was everywhere, not as a man who jumped, but as a hero who died protecting the person he loved most. The life insurance company paid out immediately. The cruise line, facing a massive lawsuit and public relations nightmare, settled out of court for an amount that would have made Richard whistle in disbelief. But I would trade every penny to have him back, to have one more dance, one more terrible joke, one more kiss on the cheek. I used some of the money to start a foundation, the Richard Patterson Foundation, for cruise ship safety and transparency. We push for better security, independent investigations of shipboard deaths, and support for families looking for answers. Sarah runs it now, with the same determination her father would have shown. I finally washed Richard's clothes from the cruise. I donated most of them, but I kept that ridiculous polyester shirt. Sometimes I take it out and hold it, remembering that last dance, that last I love you, that last moment before our world changed forever. People ask me if I'm angry that Richard didn't tell me what was happening, didn't give me a choice. The truth is, I understand. In those terrible moments, faced with an impossible decision, he did what he'd always done. He protected me. He loved me more than his own life. How can I be angry about that? I still go to the ocean sometimes. I stand on the shore and look out at the vast expanse of water, knowing that somewhere out there, Richard's body rests. I tell him about Sarah, about the foundation, about the justice we finally got. I tell him I love him, that I miss him, that I understand. And sometimes, when the waves crash just right, I swear I can hear him saying he'd do it all over again. If you've lost someone under mysterious circumstances, don't give up. Keep asking questions. Keep pushing for answers. The truth might be painful, but it's better than the not knowing. Richard taught me that love sometimes means letting go, but justice means holding on until the truth comes to light. I'm Grace Patterson. I'm 59 years old now, and this is the story of how my husband didn't jump. He flew. He flew on wings of love, carrying me to safety even as he fell. And though I will grieve him for the rest of my days, I will also honor him by making sure no other family goes through what we did. The cruise line industry has implemented new security measures because of Richard's case. Cameras can no longer be malfunctioned without immediate alerts. Crew members who report suspicious activities are protected by whistleblower laws. Deaths at sea trigger automatic, independent investigations. It's not enough. It will never be enough, but it's a start. Richard always said that the measure of a life isn't in the years you live, but in the difference you make. He made a difference that night on the majestic seas. He saved my life. He exposed a cover-up. He changed an industry. Not bad for a mechanic from Ohio who just wanted to dance with his wife under the Caribbean stars. I love you, Richard. Until we meet again on that distant shore, I'll keep dancing for both of us. The end. Tell us here in the comments what you would do if this had happened to you. Subscribe to our channel to follow our exciting stories.